Well, hello again. Here we are with another episode of the Enneagram the Movie video series, and we are going to be talking about the director Wes Anderson and the Preserving Instinctual Bias. TJ, this was your idea. You wanted to talk about this, and so why don't you tell us why this topic, and what's the connection between Wes Anderson and the Preserving domain?
I would be happy to. So Wes Anderson is a filmmaker who has a body of work that is distinctly his own. He does not work for hire. You will never find Wes Anderson directing an Adam Sandler movie or a Marvel movie. He makes Wes Anderson movies, and that's what he's done from the start. And it doesn't take too long into a Wes Anderson movie before you know you're watching a Wes Anderson movie.
Right.
Every frame lets you know this is who designed it. Yeah. And one of the elements of Preserving that I see in his entire body of work is domesticity. So in another video, we talked about horror movies and Preserving, which is very much the focus on staying alive when someone is trying to murder you. We've also talked about Hallmark movies and Preserving in terms of like traditions and comfort. Domesticity, more in the Hallmark direction than the horror movie direction. But where I see that is for a lot of preservers, there's this focus on their living space as not just where you happen to sleep and eat. It is decorated with specificity. This is where I want to live. This is how I want to live. I like being here and I like getting it exactly the way I want it to be. So it depends on what the given type is. For some people, that might mean renovating it or making it safe. For a 4, which I think is what Wes Anderson is, there's artfulness is a priority. How is it decorated? What are the colors? How is it designed? How is it arranged? And how can I do that so that it reflects my own artfulness as a person?
What struck me the most is just the symmetry.
That comes from Wes, and I've been working with him, so I've done 7 movies with him, so I kind of know what to expect. What we do is I have the camera assistants take a piece of tape, so we put one on one side of one matte box and the other on the other side, and we always just run to the corners of the room to make sure the camera is right in the dead center. Because I know that when Wes walks in, the first thing he's going to say to me is, are we square to the wall there? And I'll say, yes, we are. So we kind of do that by habit. What's great for me is that he's so concerned about the frame, and so if people aren't hitting their marks, he will be the one to say, excuse me, could you be 2 inches that way,
Yeah, do that for a moment, but not leaning back so much. Yep, that's it. How's that, Bob?
We're doing squish pans where we, start center on the door, we go over to, everything's got to be very symmetrical.
That's all for now.
I always feel like any character from any one of my movies could walk into another one of the movies and be at home there.
Do you ever want to do something that is dramatically different from anything you've ever done?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, Wes Anderson is one of those directors who has a very specific vision and literally vision, right? I mean, he sees a world and he's recreating that. So there's very specific uses of color. There's very specific uses of, I guess, atmosphere in general, right? Of staging that's very Wes Anderson-ish. And you're right. And with the Preserving domain, it really is, we talk about nesting and nurturing, right? So it's about creating a nest. And a Wes Anderson movie is like a self-contained world. That it is, and even if there are multiple locations, including the location outside the home, they are very specific, very unchanging, very out of time also, right? They could take place during this era, during that era, or an era that never really existed. Okay?
Yeah, it's like his imagining of what was the world like in this time and place.
Yeah. Almost like I was just going to say, almost like the John Wick movies, right? You watch the John Wick movies and they're very, very modern on the one hand, but then they have these sort of, throwbacks to the 50s sort of doo-wop, characters, and then, the old rotary phones and, different sort of things. So it's kind of this disorienting creation of a time that It leads to it being its own world.
Yeah, I would say David Lynch's movies have that too. There's a blend of the 50s and modern environments and music from the 50s and kind of exaggerated decor. But there's just no mistaking whose world you're in. This is not a world that you might stumble into in your everyday life.
Right.
Maybe in a dream, so there's a certain dream-like quality to it, but things are heightened. The colors are incredibly rich.
Right.
Nothing is there by accident. It doesn't have that messy kind of pseudo chaos that everyday life has.
Yeah.
It's stage managed, it's directed, it's decorated.
Yeah.
And in most Wes Anderson movies, there is a central location where most of the action takes place. And we find out what that is. It doesn't just happen to take place there. Like, that location is a character in the story. So the Royal Tenenbaums has the home where this family lives. And at the top of the movie, it opens with the house. It tells the story of Royal, the patriarch, buying it when he was 35. And then we see the art on the wall and the murals of the family's history, the wood, the brick, the vivid colors of paint, the pictures, the books.
The game closet.
Yeah, and we get a tour through the house, just like we get a tour through the ship on Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. We get a tour through the family home in Moonrise Kingdom, which takes place on a fictional island somewhere in the Northeast, New Penzance. A lot of that takes place as the two youngsters are running away together and they're camping. So, like, they set up their camp. So there's the beach and there's their tent, which is, of course, is decked out with like a portable record player and books, a suitcase full of fantasy novels and all of these things. So it's like we are in this environment. And as a viewer, this is one of the things I love about these movies is you feel like you're there.
Right.
You're spending time in this playground of Wes Anderson's creation.
Right. It's very interesting. So one of the reasons I don't call this instinctual bias self-preservation like others do is because it's about more than the self, right? It's this idea of preserving in general that may have nothing to do with me. Okay, specifically. Okay, so it's not just about my own physical well-being. So, for example, you'll see a lot of preservers who are into, say, archaeology, right, or genealogy, and different things that are about understanding the past and preserving it in some way, and preserving the artifacts that we have, right? So back in the days, before everybody had all their pictures on the phone, you would go into somebody's house, and a lot of houses would have, the refrigerator wall of fame, right? Door of fame, where all the pictures of all the loved ones, were, magneted to the refrigerator. And that was kind of a preserving thing, right? I'm holding on to these memories. I'm keeping them so they're always there. And they wouldn't be about necessarily places that I want to go to or places I've been, but the people and holding on to this idea. And that's how all of Wes Anderson's movies feel to me, right? He creates these places that are, again, out of time and therefore eternal in a way. Okay. And so it's about this. I want to create this place and it will never go anywhere else. It'll never change. It'll never evolve. It'll just be what it is today for all of time.
Unrelated to that, and yes, I agree with all of that. Like, you bring to mind, I don't know why this is coming to mind, a scene in The Royal Tenenbaums where two characters have a conversation in a closet.
Yes.
And that closet is tricked out with nothing but board games.
Yes.
It's just like 3 shelves, nothing but board games. It's a tight closet. There's a light bulb on a string. Blink, it's on. They're having this conversation. They don't reference the fact that they're in a closet full of board games.
Right.
But just sitting that there implies this is a family that has played a lot of board games.
Yes.
They still have them. This is something we do. And there's a very kind of comforting, homey feeling just by watching that, even though there's no payoff to it. There isn't a scene later where some conflict is resolved because, well, let's play backgammon and let's figure things out.
Right.
It's just there. It's just an element of their lives.
Right. And you're right. It's something that we've had these board games since the time we were all kids, right? And so that means they've been there a long time because these are all adult characters, right? But
give them away. They didn't sell them in a garage sale.
Yes.
They didn't throw them out.
Yes.
They're all there. All 50 of them.
Yes. And that idea that everybody's returning home, in a way, again, is very preserving, right? We go back to this place that is the nest, right? We may have gone out and created our own nests, but the real nest is Royal's house.
And that's where our story takes place.
Yes.
Almost all of it.
Yeah. For me, Royal Tenenbaums is one of my all-time favorite movies. I just think it's a brilliant movie, and it's probably my favorite of Wes Anderson's movies. But what other movies of his do you think portray this bias?
There's also Isle of Dogs, which takes place almost exclusively on a garbage island where all of these stray dogs have been just sent to live ferally. Right. This is an animated movie. So, and it's stop motion. So there's models creating all of it. So this is an entirely structured environment. So this garbage island, first of all, it's incredibly rich. I've never been to a place like this, but it's a fantasy land. I mean, it's talking dogs, like it's fantasy in the first place. But there's industrial works on this garbage island. There's a theme park. There are structures made of colored discarded bottles that look like stained glass. Like there's beauty within this environment, but it just feels so vivid.
Right.
There's the hotel in the Grand Budapest Hotel. There's the train in the Darjeeling Limited. There's the school in Rushmore. Like, this is a vivid environment. There's the motel in Bottle Rocket. There's the motel in Asteroid City. Like, one central location after another that has been built. Like, there's not a doubt in my mind it's on a soundstage. Like in The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, at one point, there's this long tracking shot that takes you through, like, here are the different compartments of the boat. And you're clearly looking at a cross section because it's going through the floor and it's going through walls and it's a single shot. And there's people active in each thing, like in each room, like one of those cross-cut drawings where you can see, like, here's what's happening inside this building. And you can see somebody's taking a shower.
Right.
It's like, this boat has been cut in half. It's not a real boat.
Right.
This is something we built so that the camera can go where we want it to go. So clearly this is the vision of the filmmaker.
Yeah.
I want to be able to do this.
Yeah. So there's not in Wes Anderson's movies, there's not, when we think of the Preserving Instinctual Bias, again, some people think of it as self-preservation. So for some people with a preserving bias, there can be this focus on their physical comfort. There can be this focus on, having enough food, material resources, about safety and security, all that sort of stuff. Now, my view on these things is that, this is not one sort of monolithic instinct that drives a bunch of different behaviors. This is a tendency to pay attention to a specific category of needs, and we do so differentially, right? So there's a whole bunch of needs that we can put into the bucket of preserving, and not every preserver pays equal attention to all of them. So some might be very focused on the nest, but others, but not so focused on money. Some might be very focused on money, but not as focused on their health, okay? For me, in the Wes Anderson movies, the big focus tends to be on the nest and on traditions and on family, right? There's almost always family issues in a Wes Anderson movie, right? Even if it's some kind of extended artificial, what's the term now, chosen family, sort of dynamic going on. But not a lot of concern about food, for example, not a lot of concern about safety or comfort, because quite frankly, the clothes are often, and the furniture is often very mannered and doesn't seem comfortable. Right.
But beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Which points to the preserving for focus that we think Wes Anderson has. Right?
And the Tenenbaums are a wealthy family. And the same with in Darjeeling Limited. But it's kind of taken for granted. Like, it's like they're not rich because somebody's really smart with money, right? Or people aren't talking about money or acquiring more or worrying about not having enough or anything like that. Yeah. It's just kind of there and taken for granted. It affords these beautiful environments to live in.
Yeah. Now, there is the Ben Stiller character in the Royal Tenenbaums who's, he's got concerns about safety and that sort of thing because his wife, was killed in an accident or something. I don't remember the details. But so he does like a fire alarm in the middle of the night with his two sons and, berates them for not being fast enough, that sort of thing. But I think that happens before they go back to the family house. And then going back to the family house provides them that sense of security, I think, that they don't feel outside of it. What else about this movie do you think is preserving? Or these movies?
They brought to mind the work of other filmmakers in this vein. So this focus on the environment, and this is something I see as a preserving element in movies in general, but like with filmmakers who have their own vision, their own voice, and their own ability to realize it, if they are preservers, you might see this a lot. One of the people that I see this in is Stanley Kubrick. So The Shining almost entirely takes place in this hotel.
Right.
And you really feel like you're there. And it's all a soundstage. Like the exterior is an actual hotel somewhere in Colorado, but everything was filmed on a soundstage in London. But like you feel like you're actually there.
Right.
The carpets, the doors, the paint, the big ballroom that's eventually turned into, where this ghostly vision is happening, like this New Year's Eve party. There's also 2001, whether we're talking about the kind of the desert landscape with the proto-humans, or the ship that, the latter part of the movie takes place in. Like you feel like you're there, and at one point you see what the astronauts are eating. It's this mush out of a tray, or the one guy's jogging in a circle around the ship. They're like, how do they stay in shape? How do they stay alive? Full Metal Jacket, you've got the boot camp for the first portion of the movie, which is, I think, about the first third, but you really feel like you're there.
Right.
And same with his first movie, what's it called, Paths of Glory.
Yes.
You alternate between the trenches of World War I and the opulent palace where the officers are stationed. And like it just feels so vividly different from place to place. Another body of work I see this in is the Coen brothers. So Raising Arizona, you really feel like you're in Arizona.
Right.
Minnesota in the winter for Fargo. And Barton Fink, most of it takes place in this dingy LA hotel in the 40s. Miller's Crossing, I don't think they ever name where it is.
Right.
It was filmed in New Orleans, and it really just feels like you're there. It's not just like
filmed in New Orleans. Really, I didn't know that. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So there you go. So they don't make it explicit. They don't play up New Orleans.
Right. It feels Chicago in a way, right? Because it's 20 gangsters. I think 1920s gangsters.
Right.
So it feels to me Chicago, but yeah.
But it doesn't feel generic.
Right.
It doesn't feel like this could just be anywhere.
Right.
No Country for Old Men takes place in Texas. It was filmed in New Mexico, but still that desert environment, or the trailer, or a motel, all of that. Like you really feel like you're there. The rural South in the Depression for Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Like these are, like, it's interesting that they don't have a territory that is simply theirs, that they make one story after another and just explore the richness of, they grew up in Minnesota, so theoretically it might be there. But it's like, no, we go anywhere and everywhere. But when we're there, we are there.
Right.
We explore this to the nth degree and we bring you with us. And when you spend 2 hours with us, you feel like you are here.
Right. Interesting. And that is, again, with the preserving domain, it is all about sense of place, sense of consistency, sense of tradition. What is this thing? And how do I understand it? And how does it create challenges for me? How does it create opportunities for me, for pleasure and enjoyment and enrichment and so forth? But it really is about, whereas the navigating instinctual bias is all about understanding the people dynamics. And there are certainly people dynamics in all these movies that you're referring to for sure,
Absolutely.
Right? But it really is this question of place that drives so much of what happens in these kind of movies that you're talking about.
And this is them using the language of cinema for that. Because you could tell these identical stories in a novel, and some of them are adapted from novels. You could do it in a monologue on stage. But with movies, you can see it. So very much like we've been talking about Wes Anderson does, you can design it so that everything in the frame is there by intention. And it looks exactly the way I want it to look. And in the case of like Asteroid City, you feel hot when you're there.
Right.
You feel like you're in the environment. And I do get some of that sense, like when I read John Steinbeck novels, many of which take place in the Salinas Valley in California, like he loves and celebrates that environment. There's a richness to it. Same with Raymond Carver talking about the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
Almost all of his stuff is set there.
Right.
They're kind of the working class, not big city Pacific Northwest. And again, that's very vivid, but they're exclusively using prose to bring that up, or poetry, but language.
Right.
These are films, and this is something that film can do, is like you see it and you don't have to describe what it is. There it is.
Right.
And that just brings it to life in a way that cinema can do in a way that other media can't.
Right. Good. All right, good. Anything else on Wes Anderson and the Preserving Instinctual Bias?
I don't think so. Yeah, that's that.
So I'll say that, for me, kind of the final thought as we wrap this up is that the conversations we've had about the Preserving Instinctual Bias have been different, right? So, and we have talked about how different genres, very different genres, can reflect this preserving bias, right? So we started off talking about Hallmark. We talked about, horror movies and this quest for survival. And now we're talking about this profound sense of place depicted in, by certain directors. So it just goes to show you that these instinctual biases are, they're not just one thing, right? They're different aspects of life. And it helps to understand that. And it helps to understand that, that we can experience different aspects of this. And each of us, people who are, preservers can seem very different, because their focus of attention within that preserving domain will be different. So this has been fun to talk about this and how it presents a different element of this domain from what we've talked about so far.
And it seems somewhat unlikely to me that you would find somebody who is equally passionate about Hallmark movies, horror movies, and Wes Anderson movies. They're probably going to like one of those three more than the other two, if they like the other two at all.
That's right.
The way that preservers will focus on different elements of preserving without intending to. That's just the way it sorts out.
Right. All right, good. Well, this has been great, TJ. So far to this point, we've talked a number of times about the preserving bias so far and the navigating bias. So we're going to have to find something to talk about the transmitting instinctual bias pretty soon. So let's put that on our list of topics. Okay.
If there's anything interesting about that, I'm sure we'll come up with something.
We might be able to think of something. All right. Great, TJ. Good stuff. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much.